Ashanti, thank you so much for joining me today on Heart, Mind, Emotion. I really appreciate having you here because, as I said to you when I started messaging with you, uh, when I first saw you in that documentary, it so spoke to me. I absolutely love what you're doing. And so, really, like wrote down a few things I wanted to ask you. One of the things, the first thing I wanted to ask is we talked about the masks, the papers you made for the young fellas here, right on the mask, the front of the mask, the back of the mask. And you were telling me that before shooting, you weren't sure how things were going to go. What I wanted to ask, that idea of writing on the front and the back of the mask, was that something that came up in your mind for the documentary, The Mask We Live In, or is that something that was ruminating long before?
Well, yeah, the idea came about literally, and the days leading up to the filming. So, I have been working with those young men for several weeks. So we were, you know, the school had an advisory program where students, a group of 15 or 20 students, would meet with a teacher, and that teacher would be their advisor, and then that teacher would support them, just around life stuff and goals. And I think one of the things I realized with the group of young men that I ended up working with, they were always walking around the halls when they should be in advisory. I'm like, what are you doing? So when we began to create an advisory for myself, I didn't have an advisor. I was a dean, so I was dealing with like discipline and student support. I was like, why are all these young men walking around the halls? Now, how do you fail advisory? I mean, if anything, if there was an easy A, advisory should be technically the easy A. Like, I mean, is the goal to get advice? You don't have to work hard to get advice or pretend like you're getting advice, right? Even if you don't like the person giving you the advice, be like, let me just listen to this person yap on, I got an A. They were failing advisory. That just doesn't make any sense. So what I ended up doing is I told the principal, I said, look, let me create an advisory with all these young men who were walking the halls, because I'm ended up chasing them anyway. All I'm doing is chasing them. They're getting kicked out of advisory. It made no sense because there was no relationships there. These people, the adults, were in charge. And if I don't have a good relationship with you, then I don't want to see you. And then I technically I can just throw you out. Now, a lot of times in that advisory program, teachers were doing their own homework. They were doing their work, and the students were sitting around. And so if a kid is sitting around goofing off, not engaged, he's going to be loud. He's going to be whatever he's going to be. And that's what I saw. So anyway, what ended up happening is I brought them into an advisory. I said, I've been running Ever Forward at that point, 10 years, about 10 years. And I was like, well, you know what? Let me bring these young men together. And what we brought from there was that I just couldn't keep watching. I couldn't keep chasing them around the halls first. And it didn't make sense for me to like keep watching this advisory go to waste. If you got a time of a day where you can just get and be able to focus on yourself and your goals and your dreams, why would that be going to waste? Well, I mean, if you know our education system, lots of things are challenging. And, this is pre-COVID time. I'm talking about like just a kid in a classroom having no connection with the adult in front of the room. That's a challenge there, So anyway, I'm telling you the long story just to let you know that I had been trying to work with them for months. And so finally, when they were asking me, could they come film? I said, well, you should go see our other club, because Ever Forward had a club that was like 30 members. Those young men were like super tight, really powerful brotherhood. And what ended up happening was they were like, well, no, we want to see where you work. I'm like, well, the group of young men I'm working with, is brand new. We haven't called it Ever Forward Club because they're kind of forced to be there. Ever Forward is a design where we don't force young men to come. But kind of when you're in advisory, it's kind of a class. You kind of have to be there. So it's a little bit different nuance, but I'm trying to use the same tools of like building connection. And they weren't connecting. Like when we do check-ins, we go around the circle, everyone's a 10. 10 is 1 to 10. 1 is the worst, 10 is the best. Everybody's a 10. I'm a 10. I'm a 10. Everything's fine. And and I'm like, I'm the dean. That's not, you're lying. You're lying. And they just lie to each other. But see, in the circle, I'm not in charge. I'm a part of the circle. So I can't tell their business, even though I know you got kicked out of 5 classes today. How are you calling yourself a 10? How is that a good day if you got kicked out of 5 of 6 classes? It makes absolutely no sense. But because they had to have an image in front of each other, that 10 had to show up. I'm a 9, whatever. I'm like, oh boy. So when they wanted to come film, I'm like, oh, they're going to just film these young men just sitting here posturing. And I was like, okay, what are we going to do? I had tried so many different activities. I I was, I was running out of like ideas. And so something was like, they just can't talk about it. They're afraid to talk about it. So what do they have to talk about it? What if I could just have them write it? Right? Not an essay, write 3 words. How about you make them write something, the most basic thing possible? I didn't, in that time when we did it, I didn't even make them draw anything. Because I didn't want nobody saying, oh, I can't draw, and then getting all self-conscious. I'm like, give me 6 words. 3 words on the front and 3 words on the back. And I was just hoping it was going to work. So I had no idea. And I literally came in there in my mind. I had stuff under my chair for some other activity just in case, but cameras were there. See, I've never been on a documentary before. So when they said, can they come film? I'm like, sure. I thought they were going to come in with a little camcorder, like, or somebody's like device. They walked in with like a crew, like a van of equipment. I'm like, oh, this is serious,
This is real.
And this is real. This is really real. And I got more nervous, and I just all I could do was just be present, because if I was in my head about it, I couldn't react. So when I saw them starting to write, it's just 6 words. That's easy enough. Then they threw the paper. They loved throwing stuff at each other, so that was easy enough. And then when we got to that next part where I told them to open it up, it just, we were in there, about a half an hour. The clip was only 3 minutes, but we were in there probably an hour for the whole piece. And man, just watching them drop in, what I said in return, it wasn't planned. Like I didn't know it was going to work. In my mind, I'm like, okay, what is option 2? What is option 3? The crew is here. What are we gonna? We got to make the most of this time. And literally, when it worked, I was just my heart was open, and I was just with them, and I was just asking questions. Why do we hide? Why do we not show what we're going through? Like, they literally, for the first time, had recognized that each of them were going through real stuff. They didn't know who was who, but they knew, and that level of depth was absolutely just beautiful. And when I saw the documentary for the first time, I hadn't never seen it. So when I saw it, I was at the film festival, and I was sitting in that chair, and one of the Dr. Caroline Heldman was sitting next to me. She's in the documentary. She's a professor. Just a lot of work she does around gender studies and the work with men and women and how the great setup. And literally, I was like, okay, she was on this side of me, and every time I was starting crying, I just kept wiping my face with this side, trying to like not let her know that I was that I was balling in the theater. But just watching my young men on the screen, it really changed my life. And because when I'm in the moment doing the work, I can't see what other people were seeing. And I didn't know that. I saw some people kind of dropping into feeling, but I didn't see a lot of the things that were captured, because I was just trying to I'm looking at their faces, but just watching their posture and watching the interactions between young men. It was, yeah. So anyway, I tell you that was a long story of it, but yeah, it wasn't planned. I didn't know it was going to work. But I'm really thankful that, I think it was like all the things I had tried in the years before, running Ever Forward, all the things that I had tried growing up, just, working with other young men in my community. I think it all came to that moment of like, yeah, you just have to kind of go in. I had to go in my own self to figure, like, what would I have needed? Because I knew when I was in high school, I went to that high school. That was my high school. So
Yeah.
I know those rooms and those halls, and I know the posturing. So when I see it, I know it intimately. And I was like, what would it have taken for me to let somebody know? I said, it would have to be kind of like a secret. It had to come out. Like, I wouldn't have probably been able to say it out loud that I was dealing with fear and sadness, because in my community, being afraid, even talking about pain, even with pain, they say, walk it off. Walk it off. I remember getting knocked out by a football game, and the coach was like, I literally couldn't even see. I didn't know which way my end zone was. It was a kickoff. I got rocked. Something hit me blindsided, and I stood up, and I'm like, I was on the opponent's sideline because I didn't even know where I was at. And the coach was like, Branch, get your blah, blah, blah. And he was like yelling at me. And I'm like, who's yelling at me? Like, I literally was seeing stars for like minutes. And they put me right back in because we run both, offense, defense, kick off. So anyway, I'm already jumping into the stories, but that's what I remember. And so when I remember that intimately, I know what they're doing when they're walking around the halls. It's like, man, I'm cool. I'm fine. I'm okay. So
Yeah.
thanks
I
for
love
asking.
the story. I thank you for sharing it. As you tell that story, I having watched the documentary, I can literally see that scene where you're in the room with the boys, and I'm getting chills thinking about it. I get chills talking about it because it is such a very honest moment in this documentary. And what I love the most about it was when they throw these, paper at each other,
Yeah.
and they start opening it up. Nobody knows whose it is, but each young man knew it was theirs. And it's so powerful to watch that. And I love that. And that's, again, that was what immediately attracted me to you and what you're doing. And I think it's funny. Like I said, I'm 50 years old now. And you would think, oh no, grown men, we don't wear these masks. Well, we still do. And as you shared that story, it came out again. I'm sitting in the theater and I'm crying. I'm trying to be macho, and because it's so ingrained and embedded in us to be what we are.
Yeah.
Again, that's why I started the podcast, was so that you know young men and people my age start recognizing that all these stereotypes we were grown up with and raised with, get rid of them. And again, that's what I loved about the mask thing, because we're so afraid to let anybody in behind our mask. And once you start getting in that room, you start going, oh, there's such a common thread. Oh,
Yeah.
you have this behind your mask too? Oh, so do I. But I was afraid to tell you. I
Yeah.
was afraid to be judged.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love that you did that. And I actually was wondering, have you ever done that? Like, I know you yourself are always evolving and you're continually making your own mask. Do you do that exercise with adults, with anybody, men, women, or strictly your students?
Yeah, so after the documentary came out, when I saw the activity in action, when I saw it working, we started doing the workshop all over. So I was that year I was a dean, and then the next year I became an assistant principal at a middle school, and it was kind of like this thing like, okay, it's working. How do I begin to like grow it? Right. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what we're doing necessarily, but I know that this simple activity really is meaningful. So, yeah, so now the answer is yes, we do it with teachers, parents, adults, we do it with some corporate clients, we do it with everyone. And we also created an online version. People can actually go online and make their own mask. So, any of your listeners who want to create their own mask anonymously, we say, look, the mask is not one of these personal protection masks that we know we see people around the world wearing. And I'm wearing mine. I got like two in my pocket. I'm always prepared with that. But we're talking about the emotional disconnection masks that people wear to cause them not to really be fully themselves. That we believe that people won't accept us, that they will judge us, that the fear of being vulnerable gets in the way. And I think that is one of the things we do. So I'll tell you the quick story of how it happened. So now the masks. I have a bunch of them on my desk always, right? So I'm like, which one do I pick up? So I have masks all over. So when we first started doing it, I would print out the mask and I would take it into a room, and then we would have them write the words on the front and back. They would throw in the paper at each other, and then it would be the experience. So we're doing a workshop. We got invited to this conference, this big conference in the peninsula where we live. So across a bridge, an hour away, so more or less. We get to the event. We get there the night before. We present the next morning, 8 o'clock. Next morning, wake up. My team member is with me, my colleague, and I'm like his responsibility was to have all the materials, right? To get all the materials, make sure we have everything we need for the activity, get the masks printed, all the stuff. We getting up the next morning, we're just like, all right, where's the bag with all the stuff? With the stuff? He's like, I thought you had the bag. I'm like, what do you mean you think I had the bag? That was
You
your, that
had
was
one
your
job.
responsibility. What are you talking about, right? And so if you're a leader, like if you ever had somebody not do their job, there's a reaction that happens in your body, and then the one that they can't come outside. So through all the filters that I could come up with, I was like, okay, we need a solution. So I need you to go down to the front desk, find out where the print center is, and see if we can get into the print center. Print center has printers not. It's like everything you think of, like what could be wrong. This print center has a printer. No one knows how to work it. It's been broken for weeks. There's no other printer. Well, what about the printer in your office? I know you got a printer. Can we use this printer here? How many copies we need? Like 85. Nah, we can't make that many copies. We can make you like one copy. I'm like, where's Kinko's? Well, it's like 25 minutes away. This is like 7:30, right? We're presenting in a half an hour. So, so basically, what ended up happening, like, you remember I said you tap into all the stuff you've done before, like I, I'm whatever it takes, like we're already here. Like I want to be mad, I want to rage, but what is that going to do right now in this moment? It's going to do absolutely nothing.
Yep.
So I took a breath. Maybe I didn't take a breath. Maybe I was just like full action. I was like, get us some paper and markers. Like, get us paper and markers. We'll make it work. And literally, I just said, since I can't print them masks, they're going to have to draw their own mask. So the only reason this thing turned into where everyone draws their own mask is because we went to an event and the person who was supposed to bring the masks didn't bring the masks. And now we have collected over 50,000 masks where people have drawn masks, written the words, and that is how it happened. That's how it happened. And I'll never forget that. We were on, all the only paper they could find was 11 by 17 paper. Like normally we use regular pieces of paper. Do you know when you hit somebody with a piece of 11 by 17 paper balled up, it's almost like a snow globe. You're like rocking somebody, So I realized you can't use that size paper, but ultimately we made it work. And that was one of probably the most wild. So we call it a snowball fight because these pieces of paper like snowballs, but those papers were flying heavy and hard. So that's how it happened.
Ashanti, what I really noticed too, when you talk about it, when you share it, it is a very emotional moment, but I love how you lighten it by making it fun. And keeping that anonymity is still good because people are still afraid, but at least it's a first step to getting it out there. So I absolutely love even the way you're making it fun, because going online and submitting the mask, I had been meaning to do mine for months, and I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow, and I finally did mine a few weeks ago. But I made my mask from 45-year-old me when I was deep entrenched in this dark depression because that was easy. I knew what that mask was.
Yeah.
And I also believed, well, no, this is me now. I'm living authentically. Well, you know what? Let's make a mask anyway. So I wrote down my mask from and then I realized there's still behind the mask. And now it's almost as if there always is stuff that we're afraid to fully let out, fully let ourselves be vulnerable to people, And as you were sharing the story about behind the mask, it makes me think again of, my podcast, Heart, Mind, Emotion, the acronym being HoME. I created that acronym, which I see it a bit as the mask. Where's the place that we feel safest? Within our home, within these four walls. That's when we can be ourselves, which is great. But we need to start tearing down these walls and letting people say who we really are, and let people see, I'm hurt today. I'm sad today. I'm emotional today. And what I've also come to learn is when I'm feeling whatever these feelings are, I've been saying to people, feel your feelings and embrace them and then let them go. Because as men, you were talking again about anger. I think that's unfortunately happens too often. Men will have those feelings they don't want. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. I feel like I'm going to cry. And they, push those down so deep. And eventually it's going to explode and it comes out into an anger thing. And I think that's terrible and sad. And I love the fact that, again, you're doing this and it's inspiring, everybody, but specifically men and young boys. It's inspiring them to get in touch with themselves. And, even again, going back to the documentary, The Mask We Live In, in that segment where you were in that, there's a scene, there's the two young fellas in the hallway kind of giving each other an embrace. I love seeing that. We need to see more and more of that. I think it's absolutely so important that men realize it's okay to be human, So, um, like I said, I love what this whole thing and everything about it. But you say yourself, you make your mask every time you do in a speaking gig. Every time you're involved in this, you're always making your mask.
Yeah, I've made we had a campaign manager that came in at one point and was kind of moving through the campaign. We were like trying to organize everything, so we had it all logged in our system. Here's how many masks. This is when we first started doing counts. We originally were just I was saving. Listen, I was go to a place. We would have these pieces of paper. We would ball them up. They throw them at each other, and something would tell me save them. I don't know why I was saving them. I wasn't trying to make a goal. I had no goal when I first started these workshops. I was doing workshops all over, but I was saving the mask. I was like, well, something. They feel really personal to me. They feel like I took people through this experience, right? And I think the part of the throwing the paper at each other, when you talk about being fun, I think for me it was like when you're creating experiences for people, I think it's just having different textures and of the experience, right? Like, oh, if I just have somebody, if I just do a keynote and I just talk at you the whole time, I'm hoping you're going to grab some information from it. But what if I have a keynote? I tell people I do like a kinesthetic keynote. A kinesthetic keynote is like we're gonna move, we're gonna do something. I'm gonna hopefully let some muscle memory help you create an experience that lets you recognize that you were in a room where we were asking you to be more of your true, vulnerable human self. And so when I was collecting all those masks, what happens was she was going through every individual like folder of masks. And these some were paper, and then we moved into the cards, right? But what ended up happening was she started pulling out all. She started realizing which one was mine because she would see the same. This kind of I would draw a similar a similar design every time, right? I'm not sure if I have one of the old designs I used to draw. Um, and literally, I came into the office one day. There were like boxes and masks all over the place, and there was this big pile of like my masks. And I remember like being like, what are you doing? First of all, I was like, what are you doing in my mind? And I'm trying to figure out how do I say it out loud without it like coming out. So I'm like, why are these? Because when I drag a mask, it's anonymous, but I know it just because I know kind of the image that I kind of draw. I'm like, why are they all separated from their groups? She's like, oh well, these are yours. I just pulled them out because we don't need to recount them again. And I'm like, I mean, it was only like at that time it was like 50 or maybe 60, 50 man. I'm like, but I'm a part of the workshop. I'm not just doing the workshop to making people do this activity. I'm doing it with them. So when I'm sitting there thinking about what I'm writing it while they're writing it, because I need to see how deep can I go right now? How open? Because when we start passing masks around, I'm throwing my paper at somebody. I'm hitting somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I'm a part of it, and I really didn't. I didn't have a reason that was really like sound, but I knew that it felt like all those workshops that I had really like given because it was personal. Like I'm not doing this as a job. I mean, if it was like my job and I had to go to this workshop and I was at that make a mask and blah blah blah, like take them out. I could care less.
Mhm.
But every time I get a chance to share or talk to an audience, I'm telling my personal story. I'm involved in this space, and I really felt it was one of those days I will never forget because I just had this handful of these masks, and you can't find them. You can't. I don't like when I go back and tell the story of a workshop that I remember. I can almost go back and find my mask and see what I wrote and be like, oh yeah. Did I write what I always wrote? Did I have some hesitation to go deeper or deeper? What workshop lets me put something even deeper that I normally don't put? Even me as the person talking about the mask, how do I even take my mask off a little bit more? So anyway, I'm just saying that to say, yeah, I make a mask every time.
Mhm.
Every time. Even now we do it digitally. When I'm doing digital workshops with folks, like I walk people through it while I make my own mask because I got to get really present. That am I being as my authentic self as I can be,
Mhm.
even though it's hard, even though it's
Yeah.
challenging. So yeah.
And, y-
So anyway,
and you know what,
that was
Ashanti, that comes through. That came through in the documentary. That comes through in what you do. You can see that you are genuinely engaged in it, and it's also makes it even more real. And that's what I really appreciate about it. So I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, could you share, today, what would Ashanti Branch's mask read today? Can I ask you that?
yeah. Actually, I interviewed someone yesterday. Let me see which one is from. So this is one I made. I'll show it to you so you can see it. So this is a mask I made just 2 days ago.
Mhm.
Interviewed a man in Missouri. And so the front of the mask says funny, serious, and hardworking. Those are the qualities that I gladly let people see. and the back of this mask says fear of failure, sadness, and trauma.
Mm.
And I was on another yeah. So anyway, that's one that really stands out to me. I think I was on a call the other day. I happened to find an old mask from 2 years ago, and even though some of the words are the same, I was more specific. This one I talked about mental health issues with family, but yeah, like those are my words.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's, again, it's so interesting because the words you wrote are different than the words I write or have written. And yet your words, I'm like, yeah, I feel that way too. And it just goes back again to what I said, that so many of us have behind the mask a common thread. And I think if we create the conversation, and that's what you're doing with your Million Mask movement, is you're creating this conversation so people can start recognizing that, you know what, you're not alone in doing or in going through what you're going through. And I absolutely love what you're doing. So
Yeah.
again,
Would you be willing to share your mask, the one you made the other day?
absolutely. So I don't have it written down
Oh,
here,
okay.
but the one I from when I was 45, I don't know, 5 years ago, it was to the effect of I was, far funny, um, outgoing, and relaxed, happy. And behind the mask was extremely depressed, angry, suicidal, hurt, lost. It was very dark. Um, my mask today still has funny. I think I'm hilarious, very confident, and I'm a caring human being. And I know, and that's the stuff I put out. Behind my mask, I have self doubt, needing reassurance. And the one that I speaks the most to me is that I'm still feel like a little boy. And it
Mhm.
ties in with needing the reassurance,
Yeah.
but it's, I guess to put it into word, it's scared.
Yeah.
I'm still scared. I still need, oh, what if Ashanti doesn't like me? Oh, boy,
Mhm.
and what if I make a fool out of myself here? What if I do that wrong? What if I say this wrong?
Yeah.
So that's still a real dominant thing, because when I was young, um, like I think I shared it with you before, my dad died suddenly when I was 12. Actually, it's funny. I thought about that. Would I rather have 12 years with my dad or the situation with you with just stories? But that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
But when dad died, I withdrew within myself. And over the years, that just compounded and compounded and I became a wallflower. I became scared to speak up, share my thoughts, share my opinions. And it's something that I'm working on and I'm getting out there. That's why I've created my podcast. This is a way for me to say, I don't care what the naysayers or critics are going to say. I'm going to do this because I believe in it. But I'm still terrified every time I do it. I told you off the top before you came on, I was like taking deep breaths. I'm like, just relaxing because there's that nervousness,
Yeah.
you know?
I want to thank you for sharing that. One of the things I want to say and just appreciate you for is that, um, when we get to those moments of fear of like of whether it's a fear of success or the fear of failure, wherever they are, I think what I hear from a lot of people who've done this kind of research around this is that sometimes people are more afraid of success than they are of failure, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And the idea is that fear sometimes can hinder us from even going after the things that we
Yep.
want because we're worried about what if it doesn't happen.
Uh-huh.
Often that usually is the question that like, there's people, researchers have said that 97% of self-talk is usually negative.
Yep.
I can't do that. Why did I do that? Why am I like that? Why? And so I think when we get to that place where we're able to say, yeah, I'm feeling some fear, I'm feeling some nervous, I'm feeling some things. Like like literally, if I was, well, not if I was gonna be honest, like there, my office is right in front of a daycare, and somehow, the morning, the kids they come from home where they have to, I guess, be quiet all the time. They get here in the morning and they are losing their minds, right? You like, there's one kid right now pushing around this little thing, that little popping thing is like pop, 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 like popcorn. And I'm like, I don't know who the kid is. I'm just like, will you please stop pushing that thing? Because I can hear it, which I imagine this microphone is picking up on the pops in the background. You probably even heard kids screaming at some point. So my brain is like, be present, Ashanti. Be focused,
Yeah.
be present. But what I'm hearing is everything around. You know what I see? There's a rectangle right here. There's this rectangle right here, right? That I've crafted for what I want you to see.
Yeah.
But if you take a picture 2 feet over here, you will see that my desk is absolutely atrocious. Like my desk looks like a tornado
Looks
has
like my
landed.
bookcase is behind me.
Oh, see, those are straight. Those are lined up. There's like
Yeah.
pictures. Like, yeah, you don't like. I remember the other day I asked I was on a call and I asked one of my team members to take a picture of me on my phone. And I was like, I was doing this interview. And so then I get my phone later that evening and I was going to post a picture. I said, oh, I had this great talk with whoever. And the picture was like my desk. Like I knew what I was seeing. I wanted this picture.
Mhm.
But the picture I got was from 2 feet that way, which meant you just see my desk. I'm like, I don't want to post it. I'm not going to post it. So I still haven't posted the picture. I'm thinking about posting it because what I talk to people about all the time is that, we create this mask that we want people to see and we try and keep it as refined as possible. And I heard a quote recently that says, it's really hard to be fully loved unless you're fully known.
Beautiful.
And
Love
I
that.
wonder how many people, and I know for myself, I'll talk for myself first. There's very few places that I think I'm fully known. I want to say maybe there isn't a place that I think I'm fully known. I know I have places that people know a lot about me, but be fully known. And I think how often are we in different places where I got to let people know this thing's over here, and this group I can let them know these things, and over here I can let them know these things. But everyone knows a little different, a Venn diagram circle. But who knows all of you?
Mhm.
And I
It's
think
another
that,
derivative of the masks.
oh, absolutely,
Wow,
absolutely.
I love that idea because you're right. I mean, I'm looking at this really perfect image, Ashanti Branch, great background, but yeah, pull that camera back 5 feet. It's like, oh,
We
there's a
won't be
real
doing
guy
that today.
sitting there.
Yeah, we won't be doing that today. Yeah.
Listen, Ashanti, I want to respect your time. I want to keep going and going, but a couple things I want to touch upon. I want to make
Yeah,
sure everybody listening knows that they can find you on Instagram at either Branch Speaks
yeah,
or Ever Forward Club.
that's right.
They can find you on your podcast. I know it's a new podcast. I've listened to it. I love your podcast because it is so real and so honest. Keep going with that, please.
Thank you.
Podcast is Taking Off the Mask. It's fantastic. Anybody who's listening here, go listen to that. You won't be disappointed. And on YouTube at Ashanti Branch. Yes,
YouTube is Branch Speaks also.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And is there any that I'm missing currently?
Yeah, I mean, those are all the ways. I mean, if anybody is out there who is like, who knows foundations, who knows organization, we have created this tool for people to create their mask online. The website is www dot the number 100 masks.com. So 100kmasks.com. You can create your mask online. We're actually in the process of kind of building out the next version. So I'm really excited about that. We just signed the contract with the developer to get the version 2, and we're funding it, right? We don't have a grant for it. I believe in it so much that it's kind of like this moment. It was like, it needs to upgrade, and so we're excited about that. If you know funders, educators who are working with students, if you're a parent and you're like, I don't want to explore my own mask. Like, I think oftentimes parents get into that habit of like wanting to create their kids in the best of what they were or weren't, right?
Mhm.
And we don't oftentimes let them see how we got through tough times. And if you
Yeah.
never saw an adult go through tough times, you don't know how they deal with those tough situations, then you may think when you come to tough times, I better go to escape mode, right?
Yeah.
So what we see with a lot of young people, we see escaping with substances, we see escaping with relationships, we see escaping with negative self-talk, and definitely with our social media today, which is
Mm.
all comparison all day long, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely.
I can
You
keep
know what,
going down.
Shanti? One of the things too I love about the website 100K Masks is when I went in there and submitted my mask, there's a place to go and look at other masks.
Yeah,
And what I love about it is it's not only that you're looking at the mask, but it says, male or female and the age.
yeah,
And that's what really spoke to me because I was able to go, oh, look, there's an 18-year-old male. Oh, that's how I felt at 18. Oh,
Yeah.
look, there's a 44-year-old male. Well, that's and it again. It's that common thread behind the mask.
Yeah.
You see it so often. One other thing I wanted to, I do want to touch upon is I asked you off the top before we were recording. It was about the book because I know you have a book in the process. I've said it to you several times through DMs and so excited about it. Would you like to share a little bit about that before we go?
Yeah. I mean, the reason I took a deep breath is because, like, my editor, I think, is mad at me right now because you see these movies where the person is like, the editor is calling you, like, hey, where's the book? I feel like that's what's happening to me. I'm like, I don't know. It's in here, and it's in here, and
Mm,
sometimes there's this quote that we use in our work that says the longest distance that most people travel is the 18 inches between their head and their heart.
yeah.
And this book that I'm writing is not coming from my head. It's not about my engineering career. It's not about how to be a good teacher. It is about how I have had to connect to my heart to be in this work. And so because heart work is hard work, it's really hard. Like there's stories that I'm revisiting and stories that of things that have happened in my life that are hard to tell. And I've been getting better at it. I've been on a couple of stages where I've been able to start telling the story, like slowly breaking down those walls. And I have my own fear about my writing skills. So, but even I don't have that excuse anymore because I have an app that I just talk into it and it just writes the stuff. And so it's like, what excuses am I? So the barrier, the blockages are real. So what's happening with the book is it's coming. It's starting to like open, like the story I told you today about the first the mask, that first activity. I haven't talked that story out loud in a long time, so I'm like, oh, that needs to be in there. Like this work came, the accident, the fact that we're drawing masks right now was an accident. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so sometimes when we read these books of people who have like who did amazing things, sometimes we miss some. In my experience of reading, I read a lot of books, but we miss sometimes some of those really hard times. And I'm trying to really get to that human touch of like, I didn't plan to be doing this work.
Mm,
I never wanted to be a teacher. Definitely didn't think I was going to run a nonprofit. When I was a teenager and in high school, I wanted to be rich because I grew up poor.
yeah.
So the fact that I'm running a nonprofit is so counterintuitive to my 16-year-old self who only wanted to be rich. And they were told me there was a formula. Do you study hard? You go to college, you get a good job, you make a lot of money, you can live happily ever after. Sign me up. And
Yeah.
I followed that formula all the way to college, all the way to graduating engineering school, all the way to a high paying job. And then it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
I could have kept doing it. I could be still doing it now. I could do the work. I had the intellectual ability, I had the skills to do the work, but it didn't bring me the joy that education and teaching did. But teaching doesn't bring me the money
Yeah.
that I really wanted. So you have that battle with yourself around my values and I remember just one day being at work and seeing a project manager there wheeling and dealing on the phone, right? Like just I was like, is that what I gotta look forward to when I'm 60? Like just wheeling and dealing, trying to make, I'm like, it didn't feel like it was what my life was meant to be.
Hmm.
And it was a hard decision. So yeah, all that to say, the book is trying to push itself through me, and some of the stories are coming that I'm like, oh, I had forgot about that.
Beautiful. I love
Oh
it.
yeah, right. And I think there's uh, Jerry Colonna, who has a book called Reboot that I just recently read. He has a podcast by the same name. He does a lot of coaching for CEOs and organizations, and he talks about this idea of these subroutines. And subroutines are behaviors that we use or we created when we were younger that show up again in our adulthood because they were a routine we played underneath the surface. And so it's still in there. And so as a leader, we begin to play off these subroutines. And it's like, oh, where did these come from? Like,
Hmm.
oh, this is where they came from. This is the survival techniques we created as children to survive whatever we had to grow through, whether it was so much love and attention that we couldn't be our true selves because we had to do what other people wanted us to do, or not enough that we always were hunting for attention. All the layers in between of what we had to do as children to grow up in the where we grew up, it comes back.
Mm-hmm.
if we don't give it some attention and play and put some light on it. I think that's what right Young talks about, right? The shadow, right? The shadow are those things that we ignore, deny, or repress. That usually comes back and trips us up if we don't pay attention to it. But when you put the light on the shadow and you're like, oh, I see what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make people like me, and I'm not even being authentic to myself.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to like, I mean, we got teenagers putting pictures of their body out on the internet, not because they really may want to, but because if you put a picture of yourself studying, no one likes it. But
Yeah.
you put a picture of yourself in a bikini and now you got 50,000 likes and everyone's loving you. And then you're like, oh, I guess that's what gets attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what we see over and over again is this hunt for attention. And I think the attention is important, but we got to find ways of getting it so that
Mm-hmm.
it uplifts us, I think. And so that's
Well,
that's part of our work, man. Thank you for asking that question.
well, Ashanti, I tell you what, I'm so happy that your course brought you to this path because I can see it in everything you do, the passion you have for it. And I am so grateful for that. The 18 inches from your head to your heart, there's an old phrase that I still say, follow your heart, your head might just find it. I think it's such an important thing because I love that. I really cannot begin to express to you how much I appreciate you taking the time today, Ashanti, and joining me on my show.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a great time with you, and I look forward to future collaborations. I know there's work up there that we can do. And I mean, however, the mask campaign, the movement is called the Million Mask Movement now. And however that can serve your community, the tool is free, and we give out resources for educators and families and teachers and parents and whoever to build that deep self awareness. So we can,
I love it.
I think our world needs a lot more love.
Yeah, I
That's what I
agree.
believe. So,
I wrote
and I
I
think,
wrote something down like that just the other day, to be honest with you, about I wrote the idea of reinvention. And this,
mm,
I wrote the idea that, if I see someone without a smile, I can give them one of mine because it costs me nothing and it becomes infectious. And the more people that share a smile, we can maybe create a world of love. And
yeah.
as I wrote it, I went, that's kind of
Mm.
hokey. But I also went, you know what? It's a nice dream to have.
There's a post just the other day that someone sent me in Spanish. So I have two godsons in Mexico, and one of the posts said there was a picture of a candle. One of the candles was lit, and the other candle was dark. And the quote on it said, it says in Spanish, "Amar a alguien cuando brilla es fácil. El gran reto es lograr iluminarlo en sus momentos más oscuros." It's like when the like to love someone when everything is going fine and everything is bright is easy,
Mhm.
but the big challenge is to hold space and uplift, put light for someone in their darkest moments. And I think that that's what we've gotten out of practice with, is finding ways of, even if you don't agree with me what I believe on all things, that there's still, if I'm having a hard time, that there's still something in you that says, or something in me that says, I need to go and try to help uplift you and help shine a light. And so, yeah, that's all that to say. That's the work. And thank you for creating this podcast, and
Oh,
thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for continuing to shine a light on this work that we have to do. And even for those young people out there listening who maybe, I heard you when you talked about home. For some people, home may not be that place where you can be your full true self. And so
yeah.
for wherever that may be, home may not be the house where your guardians or people who birthed you into the world may be. Home may be in a space with friends. Home may be a community that you have joined. A home may be so many different things. And so I just wanted to say that for those people out there who says, well, you don't know my home. Well,
Yeah.
I don't, but I can tell you mine always wasn't that positive, but you find those places that you can find that light. And so thank you for the work you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashanti.
All right.